You are listening to the Oracle of Light podcast. I am your host, Shauna DeMelon. I am so excited for my guest today. I have Tommy Forsyth with me. He is a breathwork facilitator and somatic integration coach. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so excited for our conversation. I saw you on, I think it was Facebook, and I thought, who is this? I have to connect. What's happening? What's going on? I love the vulnerability. I love how you share. I love how you have stepped into your true authentic self. And I love the messaging, everything. And I'm so excited for everyone to meet you and to hear your story. So would you
Yeah,
share,
of
share with
course.
everyone? Yes.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Shauna.
Mhm.
The stars seem to be aligning somehow, some way, because I didn't know who you were until recently. So something's happening. So I'm obviously meant to be here with you and having this conversation. So I
Yeah.
usually just say yes to any invitation, and you never know what's going to happen. Um, so that's what we're doing here. My journey started through recovery, basically. And that's where I wouldn't say that the spiritual roots started to happen, because they started to happen early on in my life. um, I struggled as a child because I saw a lot of things, I heard a lot of things, I didn't know how to express those things. So I struggled that way, and of course adults tell you it's not real and all that stuff, right? But yeah, I had to kind of suppress all of that stuff most of my life. So my mom, she was a Reiki master growing up, so I kind of had an idea of, the world outside of the three-dimensional reality, really.
Mhm.
But I never really could connect to it. When I was about 20 years old and I was really struggling with addiction, it was getting really bad. A lady had brought me into her house, and she was a Reiki master as well. And she was training me in Reiki and trying to provide a different type of life for me, right? So I could get away from the addiction.
Yeah.
And so I stayed with her for about 2 months and kind of trained in Reiki practices and meditation and that kind of stuff. Um, but again, there was more to it that I was not aware of. And I did end up going back out and using drugs and alcohol after that. But it did plant some seeds for me, which was really, really good. So I wasn't ready to fully commit to being sober at the time, because I had too much, we can say, trauma or whatever you want to call it, too many reactions in my body to actually operate
Mhm.
in life and build a life worth living, right? So
Mhm.
most of my life, I was just doing construction jobs, that kind of stuff, right? Because it was, the type of job that you could not show up on Mondays and still keep your job on Tuesdays.
Yes.
Because it always seemed they were just desperate for help. It didn't matter, when you showed up. So that kind of worked for me a bit. But yeah, I mean, it was about 2009 where I had really had enough and things had gotten really, really bad. I was homeless. I was, addicted to all kinds of really hard drugs that were really taking over my life. But I think because I did have a supportive family, dysfunctional, but supportive. And I think that was kind of the key factor where I knew that the life I was living could be different. Where, as a lot of people, they grow up in that, so it's very hard to change because they don't know any better, basically.
Yeah.
So I did have that going for me. I actually ended up going to India. My sister had a friend that opened an orphanage in India, so I went out to help there in a place called Rishikesh, and it's by the Himalayan mountains. It's the yoga capital of India.
Wow.
It's a super spiritual, cool place. So I went out there to change my life, right?
Okay.
And so I helped out at the school, but the thing is, I ended up, and alcohol was forbidden. So that was the thing. Like, I'm going there, there's no alcohol, super
Okay.
spiritual. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to be of service, all these things. But I did end up meeting this local guy, and he toured me around. And I found out that at 2 hours away, you could get alcohol. So
Oh.
so I was on this journey to change, but I still hadn't dealt with the root issues. I didn't even know what they were,
Mhm.
right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
um, I rented a flat from a family because I was staying in a hotel in India. It was beautiful. Like I would walk out and I would see the whole village from the mountaintop kind of thing, but it was expensive. So I wanted to stay for about 3 months. So I could not afford that. So I ended up staying in a local family, renting a room. They were super nice, like brought me breakfast every morning. But the one night we were having dinner together with this family, and he hands me a teacup, and in that teacup was whiskey,
Oh,
which set off the craving, which set off my thinking. And I ended up in Goa, which is 30 hours away, taking the train there, 30-hour train ride on the Indian train. And in Goa, which is basically like the Mexico of India,
okay.
right? So it's party time, it's beaches, it's tourism,
Oh,
it's, raves.
oh no.
So anyway, I just went off the rails partying with tourists, and it did not go the way that I wanted it to go or anybody else.
Oh
I
my
ended up coming back. I won't get into too many details because they're just not necessary, but
God.
it was just something that I couldn't escape because I kept bringing myself everywhere I went.
Oh, like everywhere you go, there you are.
Exactly. So it
Yeah.
didn't matter how spiritual or how much, no alcohol didn't matter. Is that I'm still bringing myself, my traumas, my reactions, my emotional pain with me. Right. So
Yeah.
there really was no escape for me. Anyway, I came back to Calgary in worse shape than when I left.
Oh,
Um,
seriously. Oh my God.
yeah. And I ended up in
Wow.
a really bad car accident. That I don't remember any of it anyway, but they had to resuscitate me. So my heart had stopped for about 2.5 minutes, and they had to resuscitate me. And at that point, all my family and my friends had had enough because I just went on this journey to India. Everybody's hopes were way up here.
Of course.
And then I just came back and I was in the same situation. So I ended up living on the streets downtown Calgary for I think it was about 6 months,
Oh,
somewhere around there.
okay.
So I mean that lifestyle, for one, very dangerous, very very dark, very very dark. Like that world is very dark.
Mm-hmm.
So shortly after that, where I said, yeah, enough's enough, right? And so I ended up on my recovery journey. And the recovery journey, it's a spiritual journey. Like I do believe that addiction, a big portion of addiction is a spiritual problem, mostly. Lack of connection with yourself, lack of connection with something bigger than you, and lack of connection with others.
Yeah.
So how do you really connect when you don't trust people? You're full of fear, you're full of resentment,
Yes.
all of that stuff. So you're not really connected. So stepping into the recovery community, it really helps being around like-minded people that, have been through similar things that you've been through, who understand what it's like to, no matter how hard you want to quit, you can't on your own, basically. So people supporting me and kind of stepping into the spiritual life and learning how to do an inventory of my life to change my perspective on the way I look at the world and I look at myself, because we usually, like within a family, there's always the black sheep, which I always was. I didn't really like, just the stuff that we did. It felt like not like nonsense all the time. Like, the whole family's fighting and scrapping, and then all of a sudden you go out for dinner, everybody looks good and is pretending to be okay. That just, to me,
Yes.
never made any sense. Like, what are we actually doing here, right? So
True. Mm-hmm.
it's an interesting path. But what ended up happening in recovery is I was helping a lot of guys get sober. I had a business. Like within a year and a half, I started a construction company. We were doing renovations, so I was hiring guys out of the treatment center, trying to get them back on their feet, that kind of thing. And then
Yeah.
I was working with a lot of guys trying to help them get sober, right?
Yeah.
And it was about 2017 to 19 where I was getting inundated with people that wanted to work with me, right? And they saw that I had a new truck. Like it's the the shiny things were attractive, right? So
Yep.
guys kind of got his shit together. Not really, but it looked like I did, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I started attracting a lot of guys that, they wanted to they want what I had in a
Yep.
sense. But as I would sit with these people, and as I started to kind of clear all those fears and resentments out of my own being, I started to have this connection with people where stuff was coming out of my mouth that I didn't even know myself. And I was able to kind of guide these men in a direction that was just purely intuition. So that's kind of where it started. It's like, okay, I had to make a choice. So what can I do? I didn't want to be an addiction counselor because I had been through that myself, and to me, it was not helpful.
Yeah.
For someone to learn about addiction out of a book and to try and apply it to my life, I was like, yeah, get away from me, kind of thing. Yeah. So the first thing, I mean, I could relate to them, and then I had this intuition that was very strong at the time, like. So I started looking into heart math and different, life coaching programs. So I ended up doing a program, getting certified in NLP and a NLP life coach. And then I got into heart math. And the reason why I got into heart math was because NLP was it was more of the mental.
Yep.
And so, yes, we could change our thoughts, but how do we change how we react within our body?
Yes.
And especially men who have been through trauma and just grew up in basically society telling us that it's weakness to share our emotions. They had an extremely difficult time telling me what was actually going on with them. Like they could tell me what was going on in their life, like their reality, but never really be able to express what's going on with them inside.
Okay.
So there was these major roadblocks when it came to coaching guys, when it came to the emotional self. So I was on this kind of path trying to find modalities or techniques that could help with that. And heart math was really good because you're letting go of the mind, you're tapping into the heart's potential.
Yes.
And I learned that the heart actually thinks through the Heart Math Institute. It has 40,000 neuroceptors that's thinking and communicating with the brain more so than the brain's connecting with it. So if we can get ourselves into a coherent state where the heart and mind is functioning coherently,
Mm-hmm.
and we have clarity, then we feel things like love and connection and gratitude, like not just saying, I'm grateful for these things, but actually experiencing and feeling gratitude from a heart-centered place.
Mm-hmm.
Then people could start to actually express themselves. So
I
that was
love that.
yeah. So that was kind of the first step into that emotional part of the transformation of what I was doing. I ended up in a retreat just for my own self in Florida, and I was going through a very emotional time, going through a divorce, and my ex-wife and I had kind of outgrown each other, and I'd been making certain changes and she had been making certain changes. And then it was just what we started with was very different than where we were, and it just was not working anymore. So I have two young boys. So that was like a real heartache for me to accept that I'd only see them part-time from now on. Right. So I was going through a huge emotional turmoil with that. And I wasn't trained in breath work. It was something that happened because of the emotional turmoil I was going in. It was almost like a download on how to go through it.
Okay. Yep.
When the breath work in what we do, it's you are only focused on your breath, and it's big, 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 deep inhales and exhales for the entire journey is about an hour. And I cue people during that to scream, because from my experience, I had to scream in order to access what was behind the anger.
Yep.
Because behind the anger was a lot of pain.
Yes.
So the screaming is an extremely important part to release that energy so that you can access the actual what's behind it. Right.
I love that.
So
It's so interesting in the work that I do. It's almost like I give people the permission to get angry, whether I specialize in helping people rebuild after loss, life after loss. And
mhm.
so typically it could be, the loss of a child, the loss of a loved one, loss of a job, loss of a marriage, loss of self, loss of health, whatever it is. And there are sessions where people will just the anger, the rage. I said, we have to find a way to process that because underneath those emotions are living there and that's what's making you sick. And so I love that. I totally resonate with what you're saying. It's so powerful, so powerful.
Yeah, and this will develop a better connection with whatever you want to call it. I mean, if it's the universe or God or a higher power, I mean, the
Mhm.
the name of whatever we're connecting to me is really not important.
No.
It's but if we have all these energetic blocks within ourselves, we can't truly be connected.
Mm-mm.
And especially if the heart has that block
And that's so
because
powerful because the heart, isn't the heart developed before the brain? Like in a
yes.
fetus? Yeah. I heard someone talk about that and I was like, I have to ask Tommy about this. Yes.
Well, not to mention there's a spark of light when the sperm enters the egg, right? It's like a phenomenon.
Ah,
Uh,
okay. Okay.
they've actually recorded a spark of light to happen when it actually enters the egg, right? So that's the life entering.
Amazing. That's the
Yeah.
life entering. Oh, I love that. That is so powerful. I
Mhm.
think and you mentioned this earlier that men don't talk about their feelings, right? Like I remember, when I went through all of, did the deep dive into my own trauma and my childhood and, really started unraveling things. I remember thinking my dad, he would be super nice and chill, or he would be a volcano. Super nice and chill, or he'd be a volcano. And nobody ever knew what was going to set him off or what it was. And it was really interesting. And we never had conversations in our house about, okay, how are you feeling? What's going on for you? Like no one held space for us. Like it wasn't safe to process or even feel any of those emotions. And as a little girl, I was always, oh, Shauna's a good girl, which meant
Mhm.
Shauna was invisible. Shauna didn't have a voice. Shauna didn't get angry. Shauna just was complacent and invisible. So my mother wouldn't get a hold of me. And then it was like, oh my gosh. And as I went through maybe you found something similar, but when I went through my deep dive into my trauma, it was like I went to the other side of the spectrum where I was like, I was feisty. I took up kickboxing because I was like just this snarling beast. And it was like so much that I had to process that had been sitting there for decades. And it was like, I get to be angry. My feelings are valid. The way that I'm feeling, there's a message in there, right? Like it was all trapped in my body. And we'll talk a bit more about that as well. And it's just,
Yeah.
I love the work you do. It's so powerful. And going back to men in particular, it's, I divorced 5 years ago. And so navigating the dating scene, it's very difficult to find a man who is conscious, who is even aware of if there's any trauma that hasn't been dealt with, if there's stuff that's sitting in there, who isn't even aware of what his feelings are and that they're valid and how to work through that. So I will be directing a lot of men your way. It's like, you need to go and figure this out. And I think and as the other side of it too is, with my mediumship, I call it make the connection. And when I start with my training, it's connect to your spirit first. Because if you don't have that connection first, we're not connecting into anything else. We need to connect here first and have that solid awareness of who you are, because you're eternal and you're this energy. You're not just a physical body. And so I love that. I think it's really cool. I can see how it all sort of correlates. I mean, I have different lingo from my world, but it's essentially it's connecting to that greater aspect of us. And if we don't have that, as you mentioned, we don't, we have to connect with us, connect with the universe, whatever that looks like for people, and then connecting with other people. Like it's
Yeah.
yeah. I love that.
Well, I think that I mean, we develop all of these judgments and opinions based on other people throughout our life.
Yes.
So part of this journey and self-discovery is like finding out what it is you believe in.
Yeah.
But if we're still bombarded with these reactions within the body, because it might have come from our mother or father, grandmother, or, lifetimes before, even because they are saying now that, a lot of our personality is already encoded in our DNA, and that could come from generations.
Yes.
So discovering first, I think it's important that we need to be able to release some of this energy within a safe space, right? So that's where the breath work comes in. And it's really letting go of any stories that you're attached to, because when you're breathing, there's nothing to think about. So
Oh, that's brilliant. So when you're
yeah,
breathing, this isn't chirping.
exactly. So we can literally deal with the energy itself rather than the story attached to it.
Nice.
So I mean, and this is what I've discovered, especially in recovery, is where people are so fixated on the problem that the problems continue to get worse. And that looks like people really working hard on their problems.
Yeah.
And they can never figure out, why can't I feel good? I'm working on all this stuff. Well, because we're still focused on the problems.
Yes.
So the breath work really brings you to a place where all the stories don't exist. It's just the energy itself. So people go into these breathing and they're crying uncontrollably, their bodies are shaking, all of these things are happening, but we don't need to figure out why.
Love that. I
So
love that. Oh, I had begun working on my psychology degree. This is
mhm,
probably, I want to say about 25 years ago before I had my daughter. And I've seen spirit my whole life, but it was always mainstream and it wasn't talked about. And we didn't have TV shows. We didn't have TV shows normalizing this shit. My mother would attack me anytime I would mention anything about, oh, grandma's going to call and the phone would ring, or, oh, Mr. Jones is going to die next week, or anything like that. It was completely shut down. And so it was interesting because as we sort of navigate through things and just, wow, like that is so, I think it's huge, right? Like as we start to navigate things and we don't have to fixate on fixing it. Like there isn't a problem. You're not broken. It's just a story. I love that.
mhm.
Love that.
Yeah, so and that's exactly it. And I was part of that too, where I was just like, I was on a mission to fix myself,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
needed to know exactly why I was the way I was, so
Yes.
I could be feel better and all this stuff. But it's really not necessary. And we can go through talk therapy all we want and
Yep.
discover all we want, but if
Yep.
our body is still reacting to whatever triggers we may have,
Yep.
then it doesn't matter how much you change your mind.
No. It
No.
doesn't. And I love that. And I was chipping away at my psychology degree. And then I had my daughter was in an accident, and that was my awakening, was through the accident. And then I went through talk therapy, and I would feel worse after. Like they
Yeah.
would dig it all up, and then there was no healing. There wasn't anything releasing. It was like, when do you want to come back? And I thought, whoa, oh, okay, okay. So then I would sit and marinate in it. So it's like they would dig it up and it would dig it up, and but there wasn't any resolution to it. So I love that. And then I actually eventually I didn't go back and get my degree. I was like, you know what? The woo's taken over. We're gonna go into this direction. And
Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
So yeah, and there are some people that swear by talk therapy, and I'm like, brilliant. You're wired differently. Because for me, it does not work. It no. Because I think because we're not just a mind sitting here. We're not just a physical body. Like there's so much more. So I love
Yeah.
this. Love it.
Yeah. And I think that it's good to talk about your stuff. I'm not saying that
Sure.
it's not,
Yeah, yeah.
but really what I found is all you need to do is have somebody listen with compassion,
Yes.
without judgment, so
Yeah.
that you can release or sort out some of the things that you're going through. Because sometimes the mind will go in directions that is just total nonsense, right?
Right.
We create all these scenarios that aren't actually happening,
Yeah.
and we start to feel in a way, and it's almost like our ego is trying to prove us right, so we want to make sure that we're always right so that we feel safe, because as long as we feel safe, even though we feel absolutely horrible during the process, as long as we're right, then the
Right.
ego's satisfied, right? We're very weird creatures that
Are
way.
we? Yes, yes. We're fascinating.
Yes, like I could only imagine if someone's watching us just shaking their head like, what are these people doing?
The aliens are like, seriously, man, just just let them do their thing.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So, but yeah, I mean, so that's where I've come to. And I mean, whatever spiritual means to somebody,
Mhm.
the first step is connecting with who you are,
Yeah.
connecting with your own beliefs, and maybe creating new ones that are actually of your own,
Yes.
which is really important. But the first thing we need to do is create space to do that.
Mhm.
And so we do. We have these energies from our parents and sisters and brothers and aunts and uncles and teachers and friends. So we need to kind of start to decode what's ours and what fits and what doesn't, because it's not all bad. Like, I mean, there's a lot of good qualities that I carry from my parents, I think. But
Yes.
I mean, like, just like shadow work, there's light and dark.
Yep.
There's things that we suppress that are good, like joy and happiness. Like a lot of us have been told that we were too much, right?
Yes.
So we
Yes.
suppress joy and happiness and all that stuff, but we also connect or suppress, I should say, the fears and the anger and the grief and all that stuff. So it goes both ways. Like I've had people during breath work just start laughing uncontrollably because they're so full of joy, but they haven't been expressing it, right?
Aw.
And then some people cry, and so whatever. The body's super intelligent. We don't give it the space to operate the way it needs to. And that's why things like meditation, it's like we have to get our mind out of the way
Yes.
because it's not helping.
It's not helping. No, it's true. I've been for the last couple of months, I've been geeking out on Joe Dispenza's meditations now. And so I started doing them. I do them in the morning and then at night again. And it's just like it's so trippy. People are like, what's going on with you? I'm like, dude, it's so good. Do you meditate? You need to meditate, man. I love that. I think it's so refreshing to be able to have a conversation with you, not only because you're close, but because you're a man. I mean, typically, and this is not a sexist thing whatsoever. I have studied with different masters around the world. The majority of women that I have worked with those are the coaches, right? Like I find, I find some of the male coaches that I've worked with over the years or attempted to work with, they are it's like, oh yeah, we're going to heal this in 3 sessions. We're going to do this. And so you can feel that inkling of the ego come in where it's like, we're going to be right. And we're going to get this. And you're going to give me a testimonial. And it's like, I'm not giving you a testimonial for anything. Like, what'd you do? You haven't done anything. So I think that's really fascinating because it's like, I think the work speaks for itself. And very much like my work, I just show up every session. I never know what's going to happen. I facilitate, I hold space. We're just going to see where it takes us. And I'm sure you feel this as well. I'm just so grateful that people trust in me and
Mhm.
trust in the process and just allow whatever needs to happen. I think it's so powerful. It's so powerful to for me, again, it's the connection. It's like reconnecting someone back to, their authentic self. It's in there. So it's just the other thing too is I teach people we're creating a whole new version of you. Like this version here, like you were mentioning, could have, generational stuff and ancestral trauma and da, 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 da. So there's this version that we have to have so much compassion for because this
Yeah.
version got us to where we are now. And now we're creating a whole new version. And who is that? And like you were mentioning, what does this version believe? And are those beliefs still applicable? We don't have to figure out where they came from. I think a lot of people get stuck on we have to go back and figure out where it came from. And they stay in the trenches digging up the shit. And it's like, you don't have to do that. Sometimes we
Yeah.
have to go back and get stuff, but we don't always. It's like people stay on this perpetual hamster wheel of digging. There's something wrong with me, and I have to figure it out. And then when I get that figured out, okay, there's got to be something else. And it's like they're looking for the problem, but what if there isn't a problem? What if we just refocus on what are we creating? We're creating a magical life.
Well, and that's it. And I mean, imagine you're 6 years old and your mom yelled at you and it created a trauma response within your body, but you don't remember it. So now you're digging for something that you don't remember. You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So, okay,
totally. Yeah.
And so, I mean, 50% of our memory is false.
Yep.
So there's that. So
There's that.
you might be digging up something that doesn't exist.
Oh, so you could be digging up something that doesn't exist. You're trying to dig up something you don't even know where you're looking for it or where it exists. Oh, mic drop.
Exactly.
Yeah, like that's huge. And I think that is the premise of talk therapy. Let's just keep talking you down into this rabbit hole, and there may not be anything there, or it may not be true, or we might not even be in the right rabbit hole. I just it's like,
This is it. Yeah.
hey,
So really, we need to learn how to relax into whatever's happening within us it's just happening within us. It didn't happen to us, but it's happening in us now, right? So let's stop focusing on what happened to us and focus on what happened in us so that we can deal with the here and now and let go of all the stories and all the victimhood and all that stuff so we can carry on in our life and just instead of saying poor me, it's like, yeah, I get to live now. And if I'm reacting in a certain way and I don't know why, then we have to have the tools in order to go through it. We don't necessarily have to go into it, but we just have to go through it.
okay. So we don't have to go into it. So we don't have to unpack it and look at it and analyze it, slice it into pieces and nibble on it for 8 years. We can just, oh, okay, say that again. So we don't have to go,
You don't have to go into it, but we do need to go through it.
so we don't have to go into it, go through it. That's incredible. So
People say, oh, well, how do you do that? Like,
yeah, I was just going to say, like, what does that look like? And for our time today, I'm sure you're not just like a snapshot. Like, what does that look like?
well, for me, and this is the practice that I've developed, like, um, so my fiance and I were having a conversation, and something that she had brought up triggered me hard. My heart was pounding. Like I won't go into the details, but my heart was pounding, and I felt like a different person. I was angry. I felt controlling. All these things just happened, right? So I've learned in that state not to react. So I got quiet. And it wasn't until the next morning that I had to do some breath work and kind of breathe through that. And then I had the conversation with her, like, this is what happened. This is how I reacted. And I know enough about myself from my past where I attached a past feeling to what she was saying. So that what she was telling me had nothing to do with what she was telling me. It was the reaction I was having based on my past.
Wow.
So if I can look at it in that way, where this has nothing to do with what she just told me, and it has everything to do with the reaction from my past, then it settles things down, because the first thing is blame her for my reaction,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
Because what she's saying it's pissing me off.
Yep. It's you. It's
Yeah, yeah.
you. You're upsetting me. It's you did something and now I'm feeling this.
So now I've taken responsibility for the way I'm feeling.
Yep.
So that's the first step. Now through my breathing practice, I can go into that with the intention to move through that feeling, to understand that this is not happening, that this energy in my body no longer serves me.
Yeah.
So I here and now I am releasing this with my breath. I'm putting in my effort. This is my work. Through my breath, I'm going to release this. And I always ask for help in doing so, right? So part of the breathing that I do is it's basically heavy breathing for about 30 breaths, a big inhale, and when I release without any air in my lungs, and I hold that for a minute. So I have no oxygen in my lungs because I brought in so much oxygen. I can now sit and I can feel any resistance within my body. Like it wants to breathe, but I just sit and I calm through it. And then I start asking for help to release this energy within my body. And I've completely let go of my mind at this point. So I'm just sitting there in
Oh,
silence, allowing the energy to do what it needs to do, because I've just asked my body to do that and it will respond.
that is so powerful. I love that.
Yeah.
So the breath work shuts the mind off. And then the body knows how to release when you're in
Exactly.
that state. Oh,
Like our body is extremely intelligent. It's doing everything. We don't even have to think about it. Like we're not saying, okay, now pump the blood. Now, okay, we need to breathe now. Okay, I need this cell to communicate with that cell. The RNA and the DNA all needs to work. We don't do any of that. It just happens, right? So, and I always explain it like a cut. Like if I cut myself,
Mhm.
it will just heal. If I pick at it, it's going to have a hard time. It's going to get infected. It's going to turn into something. And that's what we do with our thoughts,
Yeah.
right? So we have a wound and then we think about it really hard. It's like picking at the cut, right?
So I think the start of the practice, or maybe this is like step one. When you
Mm-hmm.
get triggered, don't act like an asshole. Step
Pretty much.
don't like act on it, or don't let that guide you. Does that make sense? Like,
Exactly. Yeah. Because immediately you want to protect yourself.
oh,
So
that.
you have somebody pokes at your wound and you immediately want to protect it. And the best way to do that is put all the blame on them.
Aren't we fascinating? Again, we're so fascinating. Oh, so you've triggered something in me and I'm feeling that. And then I want to throw that at you to protect myself.
Exactly. Because you need to get them away from your wound, right?
Oh my God, that's so good.
The best way to do that is put all the attention on them. So like stay away from me.
Stay away from me.
Yeah, stay away from me. Exactly. So that's
Oh, that's crazy. Wow. It's interesting because I had this conversation with a friend of mine, and something came up about relationships, and there was something that had shifted in a relationship for her, and she wasn't sure what she was going to do about it. And then it came out that this person's intentions a year before were not clear. And so I
Mhm.
remember saying to her, well, if you had known that piece of information, would that have given you, like, would that information would that have helped you to make a different choice? And she got triggered. She was
Mhm.
like, oh, and I could feel it come at me. It's like, oh God, what did I just say? Jesus. And she was just like, oh yeah. And well, how about you? And then she was digging up some of my stuff. And I was like, what just happened? And I had hurt feelings and I hung up the phone. I was like, I just want my mom. I was like, what the hell just happened? And I went and worked out and I did some yoga, did a breath work, and I was like, okay, so I glared a shining light on something that I wasn't asked to. and and then the next time I saw her, I said, I wasn't being a jerk when I said that. I said, I was just asking, like, if you had all that information at the beginning,
Mhm.
would it have given you the opportunity to make a different choice? That
Yeah,
was all that we talked about. It was fascinating. And now that you're saying that, it's like, oh, that's what that is. Like I triggered something and it had nothing to do with me.
right. Of
And then
course. Yeah.
I take it personally then. Like I'd be like, and that's my shit comes up and I'm like, oh, I did something wrong. Oh my God, what did I do? Oh, weep, 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 abort the immersion. Oh my God, hide. And I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
what do we do?
It's crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that is crazy. That's
Yeah.
crazy. I think that's I think it's so fascinating. And it's like, I'm not sure what your take is on medicinals and 420 and all those sorts of things. From my perspective, it's like I choose consciousness. So if I'm going
Mhm.
to numb myself, it's going to be on chocolate or maybe a little bit of little sniggle of red wine every now and again, not even. And it's like it's interesting, right? And so I find so many people in my reality lately are like, "Oh yeah, you should have some edibles," or "Hey, we're going to try some of this," or "Hey, you should do some of this." And it's like I realize how many people are choosing unconsciousness. And that's
Mhm.
okay. Like it's a choice. And so again, it's refreshing to have this conversation with you because it's like what if we didn't have to numb things? What
Mhm.
if we had a way of dealing with it or working through it or releasing it, right? Like, and that's what I'm leading up to. It's like, what if you didn't have to take something or ingest something to shut the pain down? Instead, you could, right?
The thing is, and this comes from another source. I can't remember who it was, but basically he says we have all these receptors that are receptive to ayahuasca or LSD or mushrooms for a reason, because we can access these receptors. It's just those medicines or whatever is kind of like a fast track to it. So we're capable of getting any sort of relief that we want, basically, because we have all the receptors within us.
Yeah.
It's just we don't have to ingest them and essentially mess up our system in the process. So if we're using substances to escape, I mean, it becomes an issue, because we can escape without any help. Like we really can, through meditation, through breath. Like we have all the medicine within us.
Yeah.
And during our breath work, we had people have out of body experiences. We've had people release entities. We've had all kinds of things happen because our mind gets out of the way,
Yeah.
and our spirit, our body, everything goes to work when we get out of the way, right?
I love that. That is so huge, because it's funny because yeah, so many people are like, just that, try a little bit. My neighbor, he was like, hey, come over, and he had like this science experiment thing going on. He was smoking something and he's like, just try it, it's all natural. I said, no, I'm good. He goes, no, no, really, just try it, it's all natural. I said, no, 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 you enjoy yourself, I gotta go. I said, it's just not my thing. I said, and because of the work that I do, I said, people don't understand. I said, I have to, I eat organic, and I have to eat and consume things differently. And that's just the way it is. It's not because I'm better or you're less than. I said, it's just because of the work that I choose. I said, if I want to stay at a nice high vibration, I want to be a nice clear channel for myself and for the people I serve, I can't put anything like that in. And so it was fascinating, because it's like, there's so many people, we'll just try it. We'll just try it. I said, I don't need to try anything. I left a voice message for my girlfriend, and I was like, hey, blah, 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 let's go for dinner Friday night. How about this place? And no, 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 no. And I left this message. And then she's like, yeah, she's like, Ray was asking, like, what's Shauna on? Is she always like that? And I'm like, oh, and then it was back to, oh, am I being too much? Like, should I dial it back again? And I was like, no, I'm not on anything. This is just who I am. I said, maybe he should be on something. But so it's interesting. I love that you say that we can access all of those different points within us. We don't need to ingest or take anything. That's huge. That's huge.
And I'm like, I've done ayahuasca, and
Yeah.
like I had major PTSD from when I was, in that lifestyle, right? So I saw a lot of violence, a lot of nasty things.
Right.
So there was all throughout my recovery, I carried this feeling of someone's coming after me. And it was a feeling, right? And I learned to cope with it. Obviously, I could, with my mind, I could say this isn't really happening, So I learned to cope with it. But imagine always feel like someone's going to kick the door down, or someone's coming up behind you, that kind of thing. So that was, I wouldn't say I suffered from like major PTSD, but it was post-traumatic to the life I lived, and I just carried it, right? And I learned to cope with it, like I said, and but it was on an intellectual level. I had to talk my way out of it. So I went to the ayahuasca retreat with the intention to move through it, and I did, and I really did. So I lived without that, after the ayahuasca. So I do believe that some of these plant medicines are necessary, but we've got to a point where people are going on these journeys, like, 3-4 times a month now, where it's really just getting high.
It is, and if that's what it is, then just admit that that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's okay. You know what I mean? Like it's everybody's thing, and it's funny because my girlfriends razz me on this. There's a bunch of us, we're all divorced, and we're navigating dating and meeting people. And I'm like, I'm not 420 friendly. I'm not. And I said, it's not a judgment. If that's what you choose to do, cool. No. And then my girlfriend's like, but what if you met somebody who had like 9 out of the 10 things, and he used 420 every now and again? I said, but define every now and again. I said,
Right.
I've met people who say, I just use it to sleep. And then they smoke 2 joints a day, and then sometimes more when they're stressed. And then probably at lunch when we're at work. And then, we go out for drinks after, and then we have some then too, which is fine. Again, it's not a judgment. I wish I could do that stuff, but I can't. I actually don't wish I can, but you know what I mean? Like at this stage of the game, it's like, it's just a no. And she's laughing, and she's like, but what if you've missed out on some really great guys because they use that? And I said, I don't believe that my guy does. So I said, and I think I believe that I believe that he doesn't do that. And she's like, and then I said to her, I might be alone, might be single a little bit longer, but that's okay. I said, it's
Right.
totally
Yep.
fine, right? And so I said to her, I said, we have these conversations, and it's interesting because it's like you're saying, it's like people take it because they want to shut their mind off, or they
Mhm.
take it because they just want to relax. They're stressed. And so I find it really interesting to have these conversations with people.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, even if you look at like alcohol is probably one of the most dangerous drugs that we have that is legal. I mean, how many crimes and fights and are due to alcohol, domestic abuse, like all this stuff. So, you know, it really depends on how you take it, right? And I don't like I think anybody can do whatever they want, and that's fine. Um, but I would say be aware of like what it is you're trying to get out of it, because whatever you're trying to get out of it, you already have within you.
That right there. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And same thing, right? Like I'm like, live and let live. If that's what you want to do. There was a mastermind I was in about a year ago. And I said to the girls, there were about 10 of us. I said, what do we think of readers who vape when they do readings? And they're all like, what? Oh God, why would you do that? And I'm like, oh, well, I might have seen something. And they're like, but wouldn't you want someone who is clear, a nice clear channel? And so it's interesting in my world because it's like, yes. And then what you're saying with alcohol is so powerful. I love Dr. Amen of the Amen Clinic. And, they do the brain scans of what alcohol does to the brain. They do the brain scans of what vaping does. Like, it's fascinating to see that. And it's like, I think that's the other side of it too. I say to people, I don't want to do anything that's going to injure my brain or my physical body, my energy, my spirit. Like I said, I don't want to ingest anything that's going to impact my connection with me and the world and the universe. And so I love the conversation around that we can access all of it within
Hmm.
us. I mean, and again, if people choose to take things, that's totally cool. It's on them. It's all good. But you're right. It's like, why are you taking it? I think that's what I often ask people. It's like, well, it's nice to have, if somebody wants to have a dinner and have a glass of wine, okay, that's cool. But why
Sure.
are you having two bottles of wine?
Well,
Like, what
that's the
is
thing.
what is that? And
Yeah.
again, yeah, it's interesting. And I find a lot of people, it's in my world, we call it the shut the fuck up rule. So unless somebody asks me or pays me, I don't offer anything. Like I said, like I shared with my girlfriend, I just sort of said, hey. And it's like she
Right.
didn't ask me or pay me. So it's like, okay, okay. I have to be very aware of what I'm saying because sometimes it just like as a channel, it blurts out. And it's like, oh,
Okay. Right. Well, I
yes.
mean, and that's important too, is to think we all need to become more aware. Like on that subject is why do we feel the need to take something to make us feel different than what we are, basically,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So, and of course, like we're not designed to sit in a desk all day. We're not designed to sit in traffic. We're not designed to do any of this. So, yes, of course, people need an outlet, but we're at a point in time where we really have to go into who we are and find out why it is we need to feel different than what we are. And if I'm super stressed and I've been at work all day and all that stuff, and I feel that I need a drink in order to get rid of the stress, basically. But what else could I do instead of having a drink? But it's so socially acceptable. It's like, well, what the heck's the big deal anyway? Well, you're ingesting a poison, basically.
Yeah, you're ingesting a poison, you're killing brain cells, whatever it is, right? And again, it's live and let live. I know what's true for me. And it was funny, it was for my birthday last year. I went to go see the drag show in Inglewood. It's fantastic, by the way. So we went and it was for my birthday. And we get to the halfway mark of the show, and my friends all start giggling. And I'm like, what are you guys giggling about? And they're like, oh, the second part of the show is going to be good. And I'm like, oh God, what have you done? So they come back out for the second part of the show, and they're like, and then Carly's the main girl. She comes out, she goes, oh, you March bitches, get up here. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to kill you guys. So we all had to go. There's about 10 of us that had to go up on the stage, and we had to sing and dance and do our thing. And then they all pass shots around. And I'm like, oh, well, what's one shot? Okay. Oh, I had a headache for days after that. My friends were like, that was hilarious. And I'm like, we'd had some wine with dinner. And then, yeah, I had this one shot and it was like, okay, I think I'm ready to go home now. And yeah, it literally knocked me on my ass for days after. And it was like, that is why I don't put it in my system. And one of the coaches I work with, he's like, it's almost like you've got a Ferrari and then you're putting sand in the gas tank. Why would you do that to yourself? And I'm like, oh, okay, I won't do that again. But it's just, I think it's having the awareness of it. And I mean, I'm half Newfie. So that's the joke with people, right? Like I'm half Newfie and, Screech and they pickle their livers and they have a great time. And I say to people when I was younger, yeah, like we would just drink and we were savages. And I said, now it's not fun. I said, I don't want to do that to myself. And I said, it's really having the awareness. And like you're saying, it's socially acceptable. It's like we get together, have a couple of drinks, we get together, have a couple of drinks, we get together. And it's just like, but why do we have to do that? Why?
Right.
It's fascinating, right? And again, knowing what's true for us and knowing what works for us. I grew up, my dad, lived in the basement and he was, lived in the basement and drank and watched TV or watched hockey. And so it's like, okay. And then my mother was, another whole different version of, prescriptions and alcohol and different things. So now I'm at to the point where I'm like, I don't want it in my life and I don't want to be around people that have it in theirs. It's just
Yeah.
like it's interesting. We're a product of, what we grow up in, like you were saying earlier, and the generational stuff. And it's just like, okay, what is true for me? Like, is that okay? Am I just going along with everybody because I want to keep the peace? Or does this really bring me joy? Does this bring me closer to who I am? Yeah.
Well, in the work that we do, I mean, whenever you're working with other people, we have like the real work is the work that we do on ourselves. Like you mentioned, keeping that clear channel. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of awareness, and dedication and discipline in order to keep that cup empty for other people. It just really does, and I think that's what people don't really understand. Like, oh, I want to be a healer. Well, do you really? Because like you're gonna have to face a lot of yourself on a regular basis
Yep.
so that you're there for other people, and that's the real hard work. Like this, in my opinion, the sessions with other people are easy, but it's the work outside of the sessions that is the actual work, right? So
It really is. For years I thought, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to help people because my life is a fucking shit show. I've just dug up all my childhood trauma. I'm not going to be able to help people. But it was interesting because you're right. Like stepping into the sessions, I was just a clear vessel, clear channel for them. I wasn't attached to any of their stuff. I didn't feel any of their stuff. And it was just like, boom, here you go. And then I could step back into my mess after. And so it's
exactly,
just,
yeah,
yeah.
and then we're all just humans with an experience. That's the bottom line. Whether you choose to, want to continue to clear that channel so that you can be present for other people. I mean, that becomes a choice, and
Yeah.
I love it. And I've gotten to the point where I couldn't imagine doing anything else, especially going back to construction or something like that. I
Oh,
can't imagine
totally.
living.
Yeah. Totally, right? Like it's just two different worlds, two different planets, I imagine.
Yeah,
Now, would you tell us about your center, about the offerings there? What does that look like?
for sure. So yeah, my fiance and I decided we were doing work out of our house. Basically, we're doing breath work. She does some functional fitness. She's also a sound wellness therapist. So during our breath work, she does all the sound therapy. So it really complements each other very well, because not only are we more receptive to what's going on within us, we're also very receptive to the vibrations of sound, which has a whole another healing aspect. So the combination between the two is it's amazing. I'm super happy with it, and everybody's getting a lot of positive results. But
Nice.
anyway, we were working out of our house. So, and like I have two young kids, she has three older kids, but it was just the scheduling was sticky, right? It was like we're trying to work kids, and especially during the summer, it's like, yeah, so this is not going to work.
Yeah.
So this just happened. I mean, Denise had started a wellness hub Telegram group with about 700 members, and everybody's kind of sharing, on health and spirituality and that kind of thing. So we decided, why don't we make the wellness hub a brick and mortar? And we were working out of a space, our friend's gym, doing functional fitness and breathwork combination. So it was all about moving the body and then going into the breathwork, and he was really happy with it. So anyway, we talked to a realtor and they were kind of dragging their butt. And I said, enough of this. I'm just going to go drive around and call realtors. Like, so I went around the neighborhood we were looking at, which is just by Chinook on 58th Avenue.
Yep.
And the first guy I phoned, of course, has the perfect place, needs a subtenant. The guy in there just renovated, like everything just like perfect. So yeah, we have some really cool practitioners in there, some really cool technologies too. So we have a couple ladies and another gentleman that does what's called non-surgical, and it's all about stripping scar tissues and inflammation. And they work with a technology called the cell sonic, which basically when we start to age, the rotation of our cells slows down. So if we're trying to do any kind of healing, that's why when we get older, healing is harder, right? Like when my kid falls, he's like, barely injured for a day.
Yeah.
And if I did that same fall, it's going to take me 2 weeks to recover from her, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the cell sonic actually puts energy into the cell and brings the rotation back up to speed.
Wow.
So anybody going into surgery or anything like that will come see these ladies first, and they won't go to surgery because they're dealing with the inflammation, they're dealing with the energy, and they're dealing with the actual root of the problem.
Amazing.
So that's very cool. We have another guy who has a Tesla oscillator, which works with frequency. So basically it combines three frequencies and it harmonizes the cells at the same frequency as nature. So it brings us back to our original state where the cells can actually operate and heal. And they're treating, I don't know how I want to say this, but it seems to be helping people with cancer. It seems to be like all kinds of like things that seem like they have no cure. It's helping with all of that stuff.
That's incredible.
So I'm not an expert in that at all. So I mean, I know very little about actually what happens. And Jonathan he's from Germany. He's a bundle of information when it comes to that stuff. But we also have some fun stuff too. Like we do the functional fitness, which is mostly about getting the body moving in a way where we've neglected it because we sit too, drive too much. We don't move well anymore, right? So it's like creating movements and activating the muscles that we've neglected. Yep. So we have all these like little muscles that aren't being used properly. Like for instance, our glutes are one of them because we sit too much. So it's getting the body moving like we used to as kids, like getting that and all of everything back in alignment. Because as we, if I drive with a lean, then it's creating a disalignment. So everything's about getting the body into alignment that we do really, whether it's energetics, whether it's the physical, the mental, or the emotional. So yeah, and then we also, what else we have is fun is we have what's called sound camp in Nelson. It's like a dance fitness. So we have a bigger room where you basically dance. You don't even know you're working out, but you're doing planks and you're having fun and all that stuff. So it's not just a place where basically the way it's structured is that we want to get you aligned, moving and feeling good. So that you can do the fun things. We also have a room that we host workshops and events. So we have family constellations happening this month. We have Zeal Point meditation this month. We have regular meditation. So we have different facilitators doing different modalities in meditation every Thursday night, and it's only $5. Like, so we're really just trying to change the way we look at wellness. And of course, we have our breathwork classes as well. So we do one-on-one breathwork. So you can take a deep dive more in a personal setting. So you're surrounded by the sound frequencies and doing the breathwork, and then you have a chance to integrate everything that you've discovered through the integration coaching. So that's a one-on-one session. We do the full journeys twice a month, where up to 15 people will do the 2-hour breathwork journey. We also do a breathwork for couples, which is really interesting because, again, like I was saying, all those reactions that we experience. So what we do is we do the breathwork first, and then we start to look at without any reaction, we have the conversation about what their needs are, what their longings are,
Aw.
why things feel the way they feel without any, it's a communication without any responses.
Mhm.
You're just saying how it is, your nervous system's balanced, your mind is calm, and then you can get to the truth about whatever's going on within the relationship too. So
Aw.
it's very cool.
I love that.
Yeah, so it's the Wellness Hub YYC. We are a membership only center.
Okay.
So the membership is basically just a dedication. It's $50 for a lifetime. So we're not actually serving to the public. And the reason why is because, for instance, right now, the government's going after supplements.
Hmm.
They want to regulate everybody's supplements and they want them to be government controlled.
Yep.
So the reason why we're a membership only is any of the technologies that we have or any of the modalities we do, we are not offering to the public. Therefore, the government or any health official has no authority on what we do within that space.
Nice.
So the membership has nothing to do with money, just commitment and, an agreement to our terms of service that whatever stays in the center stays in the center.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I love
it's
that.
just bringing an alignment to people who are really dedicated to their own health and want to be part of all these, things that we're creating, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah,
I love that. That is so exciting. Oh my goodness. And we will have all of your contact info in the show notes and the website so everyone can find you and people can book sessions with you if they'd like and all of the
yeah,
different offerings and
of
everything.
course.
Mhm.
So the website is the wellnesshubyyc.com.
Okay.
So you can go on there and you can see our schedule, but you can't actually access the schedule to book anything unless you're a member.
Okay.
So the first step is just to become a member and you also get a lot with the membership too. So we do a half an hour call for a health assessment and it's not like a doctor assessment. We just want to know your goals, your pains, your, whatever it is that you want to be into. And then we can actually explain the membership in that call as well. You
Nice.
get a free class, which is worth $55, which is a self-healing machine. So it's 45 minutes of functional fitness and then the 45 minutes of breath work.
Okay.
And you also get a posture assessment from Shauna so you can see if your body's actually in alignment and she'll point out what things you need to do in that. So I mean, the what you get for the membership is a lot more than the $50 for sure. So wellnesshubyyc.com and you can check out what we do. And then there's also a page on there where you can reach out with any questions if you're not sure about the membership.
Okay. Perfect. Amazing. Amazing, amazing. I've loved our conversation today. I think we'll need to do a part 2 and a part 3, and we'll need to continue the conversation. I think the work that you're doing is so valuable and so needed, and I'm excited for people to find you. And yeah, I think it's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for
Thank you
sharing.
for having me. Thank you. It was a pleasure. I loved our conversation. Thank you.
Amazing.